Hey guys, Crosslux and Broken Ideas here with an update to our thoughts on the upcoming game Nine Souls, which is being developed by Red Candle Games. Earlier we've made a video talking about the promising demo that they had released, but we are early backers of the project, so we've received a beta playtest and we wanted to talk about some of the things that we liked and didn't like about it. We won't be covering a lot of the basics of the game since we've already done that in the previous video. We'll mostly just be talking about a few things that we didn't mention last time, as well as some of the things found specifically in this playtest.
Right off the bat, the combat and animations are still very polished, smooth and snappy. It feels really nice landing hits with your sword and parrying attacks. But one thing that still bothers me is the slight bit of forward push he has when making his attack combo while he's on the ground. And on top of that, there still doesn't seem to be any kind of double jump or mid-air dash, which I was really hoping they would have added. In a platformer, I really don't understand how these aren't options for Yi to take advantage of. Double jumps are famous for allowing players to correct their jumps, which would be really nice to have in a game like this, where you not only have to platform around, but also watch out for enemies along the way. At the very least, Yi should be able to jump once, even in the air, if he hasn't already used his jump from the ground. Like, if he walks off of a ledge, he should be able to use the jump to save himself and get back up.
Another problem we had with the combat is the lack of canceling. There's no way to cancel any of Yi's actions. As soon as you start to combo an attack, you're essentially locked into it. You can't guard or dash to suddenly reposition. Same goes with healing. As soon as you start to use your healing pipe, you can't do anything else. Now, it's evident that Nine Souls is heavily inspired by the Soulsborne genre, so being locked into certain actions makes sense, but the developers need to take into consideration the differences between 2D and 3D games, as well as the speed of the games. Games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring do have fast combat, but they are significantly slower than in 2D games. Being locked into an attack animation in, say, Elden Ring is fine, because part of the experience is to wait for an opening and strike. But in a 2D game, where the enemies react much quicker, so too does the player need to be able to quickly react. Take a look at the closest 2D example I can think of, Hollow Knight. Team Cherry's platformer is also inspired by the Soulsborne genre, and they nailed the speed of the 2D game alongside the tough as nails combat. The trick is that the knight can cancel any of his actions by just doing something else. Split-second decision-making is key in that game, and it's shaping up to be just as important in Nine Souls. So I do hope that Red Candle adds a way for Yi to reselect actions, if you will. Another reason why they may not have done this is because there are a lot of detailed animations in Nine Souls. Perhaps the animations would look weird and break immersion if you suddenly cancel the healing pipe to dash to the side. Regardless, I feel like gameplay should come first in a video game.
We mentioned Hollow Knight earlier, and here's another suggestion. Yi should be able to strike in multiple directions, not just horizontally. He should have a vertical attack that can be aimed up and down, again, just like the knight. Or, to cite another example, the penitent one from Blasphemous. Especially in a game with platforming elements, there needs to be a way to handle threats while in the air that isn't just line up your jump exactly with them and slash horizontally.
The new move introduced in this playtest is the Tai Chi kick. I really like the way this move looks, but it doesn't really feel like a new move, but rather a slight upgrade to an already acquired ability. It basically improves your aerial guard. Think of it like a beam upgrade in Metroid. It's essentially the same move, you just get to do something slightly new with it that you couldn't do before. The Tai Chi kick lets you guard against previously unguardable attacks, the ones that enemies telegraph with red lightning. Already, this is a problem. This is equivalent to an upgrade being a glorified key in a Metroidvania, but for combat instead of platforming. So let's take Metroid again for example. Most of Samus's upgrades throughout her journeys are glorified keys. They don't mix up the way combat or even platforming plays out. They're just there so that the game can say, oh, by the way, you can go here now. Missiles, super missiles, power bombs, various beam upgrades, and even the speed booster all fall into this category. At least these upgrades legitimately make Samus stronger in a fight too, like missiles hit harder than beams. Now let's look again at the Tai Chi kick here in 9 Souls. It is a key in combat because, mechanically speaking, the developers are saying, remember this thing you couldn't do before? Blocking unblockable red attacks? Well, now you just can. But here's the other thing, the Tai Chi kick can only be used in the air. A lot of enemy red lightning attacks are used while on the ground, so if you want to deflect these attacks, not only do you still have to perfectly time the guard, but you also have to work in an awkward short hop so that you can be in the air when you do it. It adds an extra step to the blocking process and honestly makes it feel more like a downgrade than an upgrade. There is, however, an aspect to platforming the Tai Chi kick brings to the table. It does let you double jump. Sort of. Occasionally there are blue orbs in the levels. If you Tai Chi kick them, you get the blast off from them, sort of like the blue blur's homing attack. This is just really awkward to execute because, again, the timing needs to be practically perfect. Also, it's counterintuitive to press the guard button in the middle of a jumping challenge. Kinda reminds me a bit of Blue Fire, the way you have to charge your spin attack extra jump thingy, and then unleash it with a different button than the jump button. It just seems counterintuitive. Not only that, but the Tai Chi kick is a bit redundant and lacks conveyance. What about these blue orbs signify that the Tai Chi kick is what you need to use to get through them, especially when you know that in combat, the tell you're looking for is red. It's redundant because another ability he has in this beta is a grappling hook. This hook functions nearly identically, being an ability that lets you cross larger distances in the air, but the timing is more forgiving, and you can alter your trajectory a little more. So why have these Tai Chi kick orbs when you could just have put hookshot targets there instead? Speaking of redundant powers, let's look at one more thing Yi has access to, his holographic butterfly scouting thingy. This lets you scout out the area ahead and fly through areas that Yi can't reach himself. Sounds nice on paper, but in execution it just doesn't work for me. 1. The butterfly moves so slow. And 2, its only real use is to reach a switch that Yi can't normally. This sounds an awful lot like a key-style upgrade that Metroidvanias are known for. Why not replace this butterfly ability with an actual move that lets Yi reach keys he couldn't before? Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of old-school black and white Eastern martial arts films. The ones where the fighters can literally fly through the air with their chi or whatever. Maybe give Yi the ability to fly around briefly in the same way as the butterfly. This would give him another platforming tool, and could maybe even be used in combat. Another idea would be to have the butterfly be a spirit or something that you can use to possess a ranged weapon, like a bow and arrow. So instead of firing a simple ranged attack, you could channel the spirit into the arrow, whose path is now directly controlled by the player. The way it is now, the butterfly can't really be used in combat at all. The best it can do is allow you to scout ahead an area of the stage so you can mentally prepare for whatever is coming. The problem with that, though, is that there are a lot of enemies in this game that suddenly ambush you when you get close, so the butterfly scouting doesn't even do that job effectively. Real quick, I also want to draw attention to this part of my playthrough where I thought I was stuck. I did every move I could until eventually I remembered the butterfly. It has to hit this switch, but to me this wasn't obvious. It didn't even look like something that could be interacted with.
Now I know we've been pretty harsh with how we've been examining Yi's abilities, but we do still think he has a really nice selection of moves to use. That being said, the ones that are there are a little bit situational. What's worse is that the ones that aren't objectively situational are subjectively situational thanks to the developers. There are some enemies that you really have to fight a specific way. In general, I found that the dash is really useless in battle, more often than not thanks to its high cooldown and relatively small dash range. It just doesn't do enough. It's far better to just block attacks against a lot of the different enemies. It really makes me wonder why the enemies were designed this way. It gives off the vibe that the developers want you to play the game their way and not let you play it your way with all of the moves at your disposal.
This ties into level design as well. A lot of times new enemies are introduced in particularly devious spots or in multiples, like this ninja dude. It ambushes you in a spot where you have little movement options and there are other enemies around, if you didn't clear them on the way up here. This is an unfair place to introduce it. I believe that in a game like this, a new enemy type needs to be introduced in a relatively safe environment and only one at a time. This way the player can learn what it can do on its own first, then you can start putting this enemy in progressively harder and harder situations, because the player will have been able to slowly adapt to these changes.
Enemies also have way too much health. In my opinion, each encounter with an enemy takes roughly twice as long as it should. Not only that, but they all hit way too hard. If you're not on your guard at all times, then you could easily be ran over by even the weakest enemy in no time. This isn't inherently bad. It makes you have to plan and strategize your movements. But given how spaced out all of the save points are, perhaps this feels just a little too stressful. One good thing though is that enemies don't automatically hurt you just for touching them. They need to actively attack you for you to take damage. Not a lot of platformers do this, so I find it to be a really nice, forgiving touch. On the flip side, however, is the recovery time of Yi. If he gets knocked down, then it's almost always game over. There are very few iframes and a long recovery period, so it's incredibly easy to get stun locked and lose all of your health in a single attack combo of an enemy.
The last few things I'd like to see be added are button mapping for PS controllers. I don't play Xbox, so seeing their button icons every time I try to do a hacking minigame is annoying.
Also, I hope the environments are just a little more varied in the final release. I understand that this is a beta, so they're not really going to show you everything the game has to offer, and what is there is very beautiful, but I can only take Steampunk Factory and Dank Cave for so long. We do apologize if this video came out sounding a bit harsh, but we're just really passionate about this game and we want it to be as good as it can be. We're no experts, that's for sure, but we do know what we like to see in games. So, at least for our sake, we hope that Red Candle can take some of this criticism to heart. And despite all of our complaints, there's still a ton to love about this game, and we're still eagerly anticipating its full release. The art, characters, and even the new bits of story revealed in this beta are really engaging. There's so much potential here, and I could easily see this becoming one of my favorite games. It already has a lot of polish. It just needs a bit more work on the fundamentals, in my opinion anyway. Anyways, if you all haven't checked out their demo yet, please do. It's worth an hour or two of your time. You all have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time.